right. Just wanted to thank Lauren Daly for joining us today. I'm going to let her in this Zoom call and get it going, but I just really wanted to thank her. We'll find out quite a bit about her. She's an amazing person, fantastic rugby player, and is, in addition to being an Eagle, is now the director of rugby at Penn State and runs an amazing program called Aspire Rugby. So we're going to chat with Lauren today. Hey, Lauren.
What's up?
Look at your studio. It looks fantastic.
Oh, it's a blank wall.
It's pretty good. I don't have very many of those where I'm at these days. So
Can you hear me okay? Because I can put in some headphones too.
yeah, I can hear you. I've got mine on because I've got three little roommates that like to bounce off the wall. So I might not be able to hear anything.
You're legit and you're doing it up. So
Yeah, it's been a long COVID, whatever this is, this break or adventure or whatever we're on.
yeah,
That's
I
for
want to
sure.
know more about like when you started doing these podcasts because I was listening and would love to do more cross promoting and also to your point of it's been a long COVID, like I would like to do more things where people can not watch Netflix when they get sick of it. And you're clearly already doing that. So like, let's get people thinking about rugby. Like,
Yeah, it started, we went to a practice on a Tuesday night and had some updates on a Wednesday, and we just never, like, that was mid-March, we were like 3 games into our men's season with the Pacific Rugby Premiership, and like everybody else, sort of right in the center of everything. And Thursday, there was no Thursday practice, and then it was all just a big wash. So and it's been a big part of my life. This is the first time that I've not played rugby since I started playing rugby. So 17 years down the track, and you're trying to sort out like what to do with yourself, and like, like a little bit, I mean, like a lot of people, like who you are without it, and what do I do with all this free time, and how do I like not get so fat without training, so, and I was playing 80 minutes a game, every game for, almost 3 years here at San Diego, which is great for the fitness. It was, so those things. And like yourself, the more you play and the smaller the world becomes in rugby, and you go to this tournament and these places and travel, and you see all these friends, and you sort of count on that to sort of get your fix from those types of friends, like my friends in Denver, you go, well, it's all right. Like, I'm going to go to Denver 4 times a year and play and get to see them. And that's all gone now, obviously. So the podcasting was, it really just me trying to like connect with my friends and the people that, that I miss, and keep those rugby blues away. And
did you start like right when everything hit sort of in March then, or kind of shortly after?
Maybe a couple months after, like in June or July, I was, cause then, like the dates for the type 5 sevens tournaments, as silly as they are and as social as they are, like, they can be a lot of work as well, putting on events, as and trying to organize and herd cats and stuff. And so I think then, it was obvious it was going to go past the, to me anyway, it was obvious that it was going to be going past the initial lockdown. And there weren't going to be any, like, certainly no social, like, butt grabbing tournaments where we're drinking beer and stuff and hanging out and on blankets. So those sorts of things were, so I just needed to do something, like I needed to talk and with my buds.
For sure. I actually was, I was telling a couple of friends like, hey, like, I think I'm going to do, like be on a podcast with, a rugby, like, acquaintance, I guess, like friend, but like acquaintance. And I was like, he's really cool dude. He runs this awesome tournament every year, but my friend wasn't a rugby person. So I was like, how do I describe the quirkiness of this tournament and like why I love it so much based on the positions and everything. So that was funny. I was like, never mind. I can't do it justice.
Yeah. It's hard. Like, most Americans, right, we're all sort of crossover athletes at some point, like some of us are earlier than others, but like the explaining of rugby, you can almost tell how long someone's been playing by how long their pitch of rugby is to someone who has no idea about it. Like, sort of like that, like college sophomore, you come home with just enough information to be dangerous at Thanksgiving dinner, challenging people, like
But
that's not
especially
what the book
I was like,
says.
yeah, and especially when I was trying to describe, like, it's an awesome tournament because the people who are not necessarily the ones who excel at this version are playing, and it's very empowering. And so I think it's fucking awesome. And yeah.
Yeah, and that was like, it was always meant to just sort of be a fun thing. Like again, like it was, I've told the story I think on the cast a couple of times. Like it was a point where like I was playing at a really competitive club, or I wasn't playing, and had been fed some stuff, and then lots of people on the side, these guys would come up to you after the game and tell you, what a great game you have, and why did you come off the field? Were you hurt or something? Like, no, like the coach just doesn't like me. So like you're sitting there drinking after the game and thinking about it, I got really sad, and I was like, like I'm just not having fun, and like that's why I stopped playing college football. Like college football is a lot of work, I think someone like yourself that was an Eagle, like understands, like when I say it was a lot of work, it's not a bad thing, like it's
Yeah.
okay to like dedicate 30-40 hours a week to like getting bigger, faster, and stronger and being better at your thing. But like it has to be fun. Like you have to have some sort of payout, right? And playing, I think, is sort of our payout at the end. And no matter how short it might be, like little tastes of it can string you along for a long time. And yeah, it's just like, man, if I can't have fun doing this, right? Like if I can't run my own event and do everything the way that I would want to do it, then like, what am I doing? Like, why would I keep playing and doing this? And the amount of time, you spend away, and you're not available to go to your friends' weddings on Saturdays for like 9 months out of the year. And my wedding was in November because we wouldn't miss anything, like those sort of things. So like, it's a crazy amount of like life, just time, like time. And if your family's not into it, it makes it really difficult. So I'm very fortunate that way. But yeah, that's the whole reason. It was like, if I can't do this and have fun, then I don't want to do it anymore. And lucky for me, it was a blast. Like it was an absolute blast. The first tournament was such a joke. It was like 6 teams, I think I had pre-registered, and then like an all Polynesian, like barbarian side, like some guys that I knew rocked up, and like whatever the fee was, like the enter, they had like 60 or 70% of it, in cash. Like, here you go. Like, can we play today? I'm like, yeah, why not? Like,
let's do it.
Play. Yeah. So there's like 100 people, we didn't even have kids and stuff. So it was just like us and our wives and girlfriends, and had a great time, and
yeah. And like, I mean, I think it's amazing. It certainly takes a lot of work, and I do think it's really empowering though. It was the most fun tournament that when I was there sort of as a vendor, which huge thanks to you for letting me like come and be a part of that. But yeah, it's super empowering, and like it does have a very uplifting, positive feel. And I mean, how many years have you been running that tournament?
this would have been the 8th year. And I was set to do, I had a meeting with some people at the Golden Oldies Festival. They're a New Zealand based company, and they do like cricket, netball, and golf, and like they do all these exotic locations all over the world. I think the last Masters World Championship was like in Suva, right? Like in Fiji. And you always sort of look at it from America and like, that'd be fantastic, right? And then just reached out to them at some point, like happenstance. And the guy is from Mike, got it. He's from like Nelson, New Zealand. And I was like, oh, do you know some of these people? Yeah, I do know them, and we met in LA. And long story short, at the end of it, like they brought me breakfast, in like Manhattan Beach, and asked me if I wanted to be a representative for them, like to sort of recruit, at these sort of larger tournaments to go and get American rugby players, like over 35 players, to come to this thing. And this past summer in June should have been the one in Denver, which they were hosting, right? And they had the soccer complex in Arvada. They had 60 teams from like 9 countries. And, I was like, hey, you mind if we slip in, an hour or two on a field somewhere, this silly thing. And so I was going to do one in Denver, one in like Southern California somewhere. And then keep the one, I was going to go to, I was working with Orsu actually, and go to Portland and do that. So I talked with Megan Adams and some of them, and looking to do more like an affiliate. I don't know how I would describe it, but sort of working with the club, because again, like the intent was always to work with my club, and sort of make it a fundraiser.
Yeah.
It was sort of a joke in San Francisco for a long time, and it wasn't until like I was leaving that they were going, "Hey, like, are you going to come back and do this again?" And
They're like, hey, we actually really love this tournament. Please always come back.
it was like 600 people at SMGG
Yeah,
once, and
which is
uh,
incredible.
yeah, and like to think about like the first one to go there. So and then yeah, like it's you know, like there's all different makes and models that come, and I've met a lot of great people, and there's no, you know, there's a place for everyone at the tournament, you know,
There is, yeah.
and that was always been really cool, like sharing rugby with everyone, and like there was enough stuff there to make it not just rugby, right? Like to make anyone that wanted to come and like just come and watch, and
Yeah.
having music and bounce houses and those sorts of things, like those things sort of separate you from other events, right? Because then if there's something for everyone, then your family can stay, and then you don't have to do the hustle, right? Like if your partner's waiting for you and you've got kids or whatever, a dog, and you've been at the field for 9 hours and you're not having any fun, like that's an uncomfortable car ride, you know, in a sunburn. So like
Yeah.
those things, you try to minimize those things, and yeah, include everyone, you know, like that was the goal anyway.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, as with most rugby things, this is not the year for it, but I mean, I'm super curious to hear like what you've been up to. I know we were texting a bit back and forth, how coaching was. Like, I'm sure you had to take some creative approaches, and just, yeah, how you're feeling, your body's feeling. Maybe old joints needed a little rest anyway. I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, it's good. It was good to get a rest. It was good to, you know, not at first, you know, I think I had like a pretty serious bout of depression
Yeah.
for a while, and I don't think that that's unique to me. So um, there was that, and then yeah, coaching has obviously been very tough. Trying to do some of those things. So I was fortunate to sort of work at St. Augustine here in San Diego,
Yeah.
and they got onto campus and started, you know, heavy protocols and cohorts and things like that. So we've been able to train on campus, which is pretty unique in this scenario, and that's been the last sort of 3 months or
But
so.
but I heard in when you were talking to Ham in your previous podcast, like you had to put them in like groupings or bubbles, right? Like
Yeah. So they've got, well, they had, I think initially like 66 and then 70 kids that signed up and said that that they were interested in playing, right? So that's on the small school, there's 700 kids at Saints. And so that's 1 out of 10 that were interested in playing on campus, which is cool.
super cool.
But they can only get in groups of 7. So you can have a cohort of 14,
Sure.
but those 7, like you just split the cohort down the middle and you have sort of groups of 7, and you can't do certain things, you know, like you know, they can't pass in between those 2 cohorts, because then you're passing cooties back and forth. So like we had masks on, you know, the whole time, so we're trying to run around and play games and giggle, and like it's pretty tough, you know, like the kids don't have a beard, but like it's, for me it's really tough, you know, like it's hot
Yeah.
and sweaty and smells like lunch sometimes, and it's really rough in there, but like again, like it's so much better than sitting around and pining for it, you know. And so it's hard, it's difficult, you know, but I think that it's been well worth the effort, and the boys seem to really enjoy what we're doing, and we're trying to make it as fun as possible. And there's been a lot of stuff at the school too, that school has cameras, you know, and for security, but what they're using them for now is, you know, like they look at a sports team and say, hey, this team or that team isn't abiding by the rules, you know. They've got kids that are in contact, and like they're young kids, they're 15 to 18-year-old kids, you know, so they're pretty bad about following the detail and the letter of the law. But so we'll, yeah, you could have it say, hey, that was a great training today, and then come on campus tomorrow and be, hey, you guys gotta, like, you know,
Stop
doing that.
Well, I'm really curious. I mean, were you sort of captaining the effort to figure out how that was organized, or how to organize it in a safe way, or how did, you know, the group establish a plan, I guess? And the reason I ask is because, like, I mean, as you know, I've been trying to support athletes like in during this time with like coaching remotely, which is its own beast, but I mean, it's not the perfect solution. I mean, ideally people would be able to train together even in small groups, kind of like what you were doing. So I'm genuinely very interested in how you went about planning for such a monster, like such a beast of a task.
Yeah. Well, the school, again, like the school, like I'm very fortunate to work with a guy like Eric Dent, who's the on-campus, he's a Spanish teacher and started the program, I think like 11 years ago. He's very organized, and the school made it very clear like what the protocol was and what you could and couldn't do. So that, while restrictive, made it easy to sort of make a plan. So then it's just the day-to-day stuff, like how do we get them to do rugby type things, activities that will translate to playing rugby someday, right? So like we can play fun games and conditioning games, and we've got like trash can game where kids are running around trying to score in the trash can, and like but constantly sort of reminding them like this is the skill, like we're practicing the skill, not this game or drill. This is how it would relate, like this is how a situation or scenario in a rugby game where catch and pass under pressure is really important, and then try to show them because it's not always a straight line in a game like that. So the first 3 weeks I'd say was pretty much game based, and like running around far away from each other. And the school made it, very clear, like this is how we're going to stay open, to the boys. This is how, you can operate in that space. These are the rules. If you can make these restrictions work for you, then you can do it. If not, then that's okay too. Like we don't need kids getting sick and stuff. So that was the challenge, but like in the cracks basically is where we've been living. So
yeah.
So that was, I mean, it's been tough, and we've got a handle on it now, we're sort of used to it. And I mean, you plan a session and then you go to the field, on the best of days, right? As a coach, like you could have something so like, oh, I've drew this up last night, it's going to be fantastic. And you get there and like, it's like hieroglyphics to them. They don't understand it, or like you don't have the stuff, or
Numbers.
Team squatting on the field. Yeah. Or just half your team shows up, and like, you have to be pretty fluid anyway. So now we sort of get a handle on it, and it's just a scenario that we're working in now, but
I'm impressed, and I'm sure that it's so appreciated because, any kind of activity, especially rugby, is few and far between right now. So like, yeah, I'll have to pick your brain offline for some ideas as well, because I'm sure a lot of thought has gone into it, and it sounds awesome.
Yeah. Like one of my favorites, I think, is just like a pool noodle, like touch, there's a pool noodle is about 6 feet long. So, and like, again, like I'll go to a field over the weekend with the kids, and sort of test out some of these silly games, and like whack my son with a pool noodle. He thinks it's hilarious. And yeah, sort of okay, like here's your pool noodle now, right? And like, you've got to touch daddy 10 times or whatever, like in the square. And
yeah,
so just like playing with it, and getting a bit of my fitness in. And then, just having fun with the kids outdoors is pretty special these days. And then just taking that right to the Tuesday training, and okay, like, Buxton and I figured this game out over the weekend, and this is what we're doing today. So that's been pretty cool. And just trying to find existing drills, that we have to keep space between each other. Like, okay, great. Like, we're going to play that mirror drill that you would do in sevens. Because high school kids have this sort of mentality sometimes of this, like, they look like coal miners, where they just put their head down and like they just shovel balls across their, there's like, no, like we get paid by the ton, and they just never like look up and go forward. So I was like, oh, we'll do that mirror drill, right? Like 7-on-4, where you have to sort of go, like teaching them to run forward first, to sort of fix defenders, and but you can't touch them. So we just give them pool noodles and then whack them within 6 feet. So
I love it.
It makes 4 people defending a full-size field a lot easier, all of a sudden. So
yeah, certainly.
that's been a lot. But I mean, Saints is very, very dedicated to keeping the boys safe. And I mean, it's a closed campus already, so a lot of testing going on there, and a lot of requirements for me to get on campus. But yeah, it's been very, very cool, very fortunate. It's also like 3.5 miles from my house, so between that and the lab, which is downtown, I think I'm like a tank of gas a month, which when I started doing this stuff, when I moved home from Denver, I was driving almost 700 miles a week, Monday through Friday, before any rugby games, and playing for a club in San Francisco. So even the airplane ride was, you had to go to SFO on a Saturday morning. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so I lived in San Diego for 5 years, and it's like still probably my most favorite place on earth. So many good people like yourself, and dear friends that I played with. But yeah, I've been trying to get back there, but just trying to be really respectful of everything going on with travel. But I'm gonna, when I feel like it's a little bit safer, I'll be back there, and we can get a coffee or a beer or whatever and talk shop if you're up for it. But been dying to get back. So
Coffee and beer. Well, like, and this isn't official yet, but like I may be out there in January out in Denver, actually. A lot of us are looking at sort of making a move. I had a chat about being the head S&C for the Glendale or the Colorado Raptors now.
yeah. Did you talk to Shabbat?
I talked to Shabbat. Yeah, she's still, like she's one of my best buds. That's for sure and for certain. And you can tell like sort of the way that like my wife will refer to her, like to other people. She's like, I've just got to meet this person.
Yeah.
But like I talked to Shabbat and I talked to Coach Bullock and I talked to Pete Borlays and Peter Pask, who's the manager there, who actually my year in Glendale, I played with Peter on the Colorado Raptors or the Glendale Raptors then. So it was pretty funny, like to have to take some of these guys serious, like when you go out on tour together.
Yeah, you're like, we've never spoken,
professionally at all.
Yeah.
Like,
or like or like even just not on a field, I guess, like I imagine. But yeah, she's as you know, she's still very active and like very much in the know. So yeah, come out here if the things play out, like, please.
Yeah, it wouldn't, I don't know how it would work. We're going through some of the details now, and there's still some stuff to sign, but it looks, according to them, looks really good. So it'd be something really cool to do. And it's been a long time since we've, lived in Denver. So
yeah,
show the kids the snow, that sort of stuff.
It's snowing right now. So yeah, it's a cozy day for sure. I was going to ask, what year were you all out here? I'm wondering if, we were ships passing in the night or.
Yeah, most likely. So 2009, I was there from January till just about the end of the year.
Cool.
I had met the year prior, I'd met, Coach Bullock and a guy named Jeff Old through the Kudu Rugby. And they were, they invited me to play on their team for the Aspen Rugger Fest.
Yeah.
Sort of like a recruiting tool, I think now, like looking at it, like for Glendale. So they picked me up. They're a very kindly old man, picked me up in a van with a scrum machine attached to the back of it and some absolute monsters in the van, and I sort of look in there like, oh, this must be us. And we get there and he picks us up and we go straight to lunch and then went to past the stadium, and there was still like, the street, Kentucky Avenue still, or Mississippi still went through, right? They hadn't built any of that stuff. And they're like, oh, this is what we're going to do. And, I was like, well, my dad had a construction project growing up as a kid. He's still working on, it'd be great, if you ever get it done. And then a year later, I was there playing and driving to Colorado Springs for my internship with NSCA from Glendale, because I knew it was going to be sort of a short-term thing. And the stadium and like all, all that stuff is done, and they were working
just
on
recently done.
Yeah. So where the sort of landscaping is there between the stadium and the turf field, there was this huge street and like this drop down. And I remember being there, for 3 or 4 months, and like a flash flood came through and it filled that thing in, and there were cars floating around in the parking lot. And like, like had recently they said like, oh, players can't park here anymore because like it's filling up, and it's meant for the city officials. And like, okay, fine, I'll park on the street. And like the next day it was like a river of cars floating down Mississippi Street. And you're like, oh, well, all right then. Like, that's bad. But things like that, now they've all filled in and it's, it's gorgeous now. Like it's pretty phenomenal facility. The only one of its kind, here in the States. And like, you'd be hard pressed to find better facilities, in many other places of the world, I think, especially municipal facilities where we played a game and there was too much snow on the field and the guys came out and plowed the field for us and moved the lines in. So
the like all the like support staff has always made it super possible to, to my knowledge, to operate, hold events and whatnot. I think back in 2009, I was wrapping up my undergrad, commuting to Denver at least probably once a week or once every 2 weeks to get some extra reps in with playing with the women's team. And it was a brand new stadium and we got to practice in it. I remember, I think even Mark Bullock might have been coaching the team temporarily at that time, the women's team. And yeah, we got to practice in the stadium and it was brand new. And it was magic. So
Yeah. I mean, I went from Humboldt State University, right? Like playing in the Manila Community Park, where if it was raining and you played at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, like the water would just rise because the tide was coming in around you.
yeah, I mean, I have no idea what that would be like, but I can only imagine it was
it's pretty bad. Like a scrum goes down anyway. You're just like, blah, 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 like get up. But no one can hear you at the bottom of the puddle. And like just like Friday afternoons, we'd go to the beach and fill some guy's truck up with sand and fill in all the holes and walk the field for glass and like syringes and stuff. Like the field was maybe 47 meters wide, and like we made people play on it because it was the only piece of grass that anyone would ever give us. And it's quite a bit different now. They've got some great people involved with that program, and they're on campus and they play on the soccer field. And the school's done a lot, some bad things about like dropping the football program and what that meant to the school and things like that. But the rugby programs tried to, sort of thrive in that sort of power gap, I guess, and funding and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's been pretty cool. But yeah, to go from that to stadium with your face on a jumbotron and like you're warming up and like there's a TV in your locker room and stuff, I was like, man, I don't have a TV this big at home. Like this is, it's pretty wild. And it definitely comes like its own bag of sort of, I don't know what you call it. Yeah, just like, I mean, you're a city funded team, right? So like that could be great. I mean, for many things, it's very, very cool. For other things, like if things don't go well for the city, then, the rugby team also feels those problems and those issues. So, but I mean, it's a different side of the same coin, right? Like we didn't have any money at Humboldt State at all, like $0 for anything. And you were sort of scrapping together every dollar you had, as a program, wishing you had more. But, if you get, if you're a multi-million-dollar operation, like that has its own problems, like money becomes its own issue there. So.
Well, I hear you. And like actually something that I've voiced with friends, but I mean, I feel pretty strongly about is a lot of rugby players have experiences like you and I where it wasn't glamorous. And that's kind of made us appreciate, a good field or, having different supports. But I don't know anymore. I don't know. There's young rugby players out there who have had who have been really fortunate in kind of growing up in the sport early on and had some really cool opportunities and been part of really cool programs. But there's something to be said about a rugby player who's played on a really shitty field and, like you said, had to like pick up trash before they played. And it just kind of makes you it makes me, at least I'll speak for myself, really appreciative of the cool stuff that does come along, kind of as we're alluding to. And I don't want to ever lose that. And I don't want, the culture to lose that, because it's part of what I love about rugby is it's not always glamorous, and it makes me appreciate the cool stuff that does come along. So
yeah, I think that there's a lot of that, there's a lot of kids now, and like I'm the old man on the team now. So I'm playing with guys who are 10, 15 years younger than me. And like it didn't bother me, here like in San Diego, playing at on back, there's a great support system. There's some great people involved in it, but the rugby club is sort of one aspect of this whole big, right, Old Mission Beach Athletic Club. So you do have to fend for yourself, like if you want to have a rugby game, you're going to have to put the rugby posts up, and you're going to have to paint, like there's a very kindly old man that paints our field for us. But like if you don't ask him to do it, he's not going to, so it's like all these things like, oh, why isn't the field painted? It's like, well, did you talk to Big Ed yet? Like, well, no. I'm like, well, like Big Ed is the man. Like he's going to be at the gate on Saturday, and he's going to be here Tuesday through Friday painting the field, but only if only if he knows that there's a game. So I think that, like not being able to shoot someone a DM or like, comment on their Instagram page, like, it's no, you got to pick up the phone and you got to call this guy. And like,
you got to find out what Big Ed is doing on Monday, like I don't know, Thursday night, because he's got to,
as sooner the better, right? Because like he's gonna go buy paint and stuff, like all these things. So, like if you want help, like closed mouths don't get fed. So you're going to have to speak up and plan ahead to get ahead, that sort of stuff. So I think it was great. I think it was really good for them. Like these kids, some of them are awesome, just like they see someone doing something, they just go and pick it up and they, start walking in that direction. Other kids, not as much. You sort of have to, hey, we're still doing this. Like, see all this stuff on the field? Like, it's all got to go away tonight. Like, we can't leave this out. Otherwise, the neighbors on the other side of the fence that live by the riverbank, like, this will all be gone like tomorrow. So we got to put it away.
Yeah, and I have such fond memories. I've played for several clubs, and very much kind of the same idea, but different locations, where part of also what made it special was like after the match, you are beat up and you have friends there that you can like say hi to and stuff, but then you also have to drag the post back or whatever it is, like pick up things and clean up as a group. But it just kind of is like a nice way to like wrap, where it's not like everyone's just bolting, like going into their cars, see ya at practice. It's everyone's grabbing some stuff, hauling it back to the shed, and you're able to kind of, as you're carrying something with a friend, like a teammate, remember that scrum, it was the worst. Like, it just was a nice wrap of after the match, I think. And I hold those memories like very dear. And I love rugby. So those were cool things that I was happy to be a part of.
Yeah, rugby's the best. And like I talked to Ben Reynolds, and talked about a lot about community and like how to involve people, all people. So not just rugby players, but their partners and significant others and children and dogs, and like that feeling is what is why we would sign up to do that. I've always said it takes a special kind of weirdo to play rugby, like to want to do this, to pay someone to go and slap into each other for 80 minutes, like for months, right? For like from January to June, and you're gonna have a preseason and stuff, and you're gonna pay them, in order to do that, so that you have the opportunity. And there's only one thing, that would make any like sane person want to do that, and it was just like the most fun that they've ever had. And the people involved and people around, and those memories of those days, and like you said, like just beat the hell. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna go like move all this stuff and drag it 1,000 yards back to
after you've already played.
Yes.
And, like, hurting.
Yeah, like I'm gonna put my cutoffs and my flip-flops on and just sort of meander around the field and pick up trash. And but those things are, those are the things that I think people will always remember, and why they'll come back, even after all this craziness. Like, that's what will be the cherished memory, I think.
For sure. I agree with you.
Yeah. So you're in Denver now. Are you done with Pennsylvania?
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to be the director of operations for Penn State Rugby, and was very busy. I was basically I was the forwards coach for the men's team, and then I was assisting Kate Daly with the women's team. So I'd be in the office for about 4 to 5 hours with both head coaches, and then go out, be at the men's practice for a couple hours, go straight to the women's practice for a couple hours, go to bed, rinse, repeat. And it was a fantastic opportunity. It was literally everything I had wanted as far as what it meant to be coaching with really strong coaches, under really strong coaches, and with a really strong program. But I'm so far from home. I've never lived on the East Coast. So that was my first time, and very close with my family. And I'm from here, so they're in Denver, the Denver area. So I think the timing was just a little bit off, but what an incredible opportunity. And I'm so grateful to have had it. So now I'm back in Denver, ironically close to family during, a really hard year for the community and the world. So that was lucky. I just pop up and check on my parents from time to time, which is good. So
yeah, that's fantastic. We're sort of looking at this opportunity, if it comes through, right, to go to Denver as sort of like a long-term adventure, since the kids are going to be remote. I don't think they're going back to school anytime soon. My wife's job is remote. They're not even allowed to go in the office, like they're not even considering it until after June of next year. And I work remotely for the Iron Neck, which is based in Austin, Texas. So that's a bit closer for them. They've been really cool and flexible with me from the very beginning and understanding of my situation with my roommates and, and
Hey, when you
the thing that
find
we do.
somebody that's good, you make it work. You make it work for them. So I'm loving that, and you will be closer.
Yeah, so that's weighing heavily on us. We're trying to sort out, whether that's a real thing or a real adventure that we're going to take, and because we do really like San Diego, being that it's one of the most restricted areas in the world right now as far as COVID stuff, and ICUs filling up and like lots of bad news all around us. We've been very good, very strict, and following our isolation stuff and trying to make sure, because my wife's very susceptible. She has really terrible asthma, or can get it. The
Yeah.
baby obviously is useless in a fight, like can't defend himself at all. And then my oldest boy, Buxton, he also has a bit of respiratory stuff. A lot of inner ear infections as a young kid, between like 1 and 3, and eventually had tubes, the old like drainage thing. So much better now. But the last time we went to Aspen, actually, like the night before the final, we'd all been sort of hanging out and had a few quiet ones, after the barbecue and stuff, and like, oh, we got this big game tomorrow. And 3 a.m. like woke up and his like chest is retracted and he can't pull in any air, and we like had to rush to the hospital there in Aspen, 3:30 in the morning, and do some steroid inhalers and stuff like that. And it was pretty wild. Like we got there and someone had come in, there was like a helicopter coming in, and the hospital, you pull in the front door, the helicopter pad is about 20 feet in the air, but right off the front door there in Aspen. So we were trying to get him out of the door, and like we pull in, the helicopter's coming down, and I was like, and we're like, man, it's coming for us. And I realized what was happening. And I was just like, get out, get out, get out, get out. Right. Like just like pulling people out of the car, and like went to slam the door shut as they went into the hospital. And like the helicopter goes right over the top of you from like literally from like 30 feet above you, and just like slam the door of the car rental open. You're like, ah, and then it's done. Right. Then it lands. And like, it's just like, oh man, what
Only
a night.
accident, right? Like,
so crazy. Yeah. But like luckily he was all good. We went back, I think, the next day for a little follow up, but yeah, so like respiratory stuff, pretty serious for our family, and so we've had to be very strict about it. So
yeah, I hear you. It's super important. And I was having a conversation yesterday where I think it's everyone can compromise a little bit and help the collective, help the community, and just everybody can do a little bit. So
you would hope, like again, like we don't get to go out and do the fun stuff that we like to do, because we sort of we have this, like, we look like burglars. We were sort of casing the beach or casing like a park. Like, what do you guys like? Who's over there? Do they have masks on? Like, no, they don't. Like, okay, like let's go to plan B. Like,
yeah,
and like it's really hard, because my kids have always grown up coming with me, like, working in the gym and doing the things that I do. It lent itself to them being with me, and the Bay Area was such a struggle for us for so long financially that I was like, we're not going to do that. Like, we're not going to pay $2,500 a month for childcare, and then have a commute. And so coming to San Diego, I was like, we're done with that. Like they come to the gym, they do these things with us. They go to the tournaments, they go to the games, like we have family cutoff day on Saturday, and like we wear flip flops and cutoffs and like do the rugby thing on a Saturday. So I think as hard as it is for me, like it's pretty tough on them just mentally, like knowing that they can't go out and do stuff. And they understand, they're very smart kids, but doesn't make you feel any better. So it's not going to make them feel any better knowing that, hey, at least you're not sick, like, yeah, great. Like, that's great. It is great. But 9 months down the track, you're like, please, can we go outside again?
yeah, I hear you. And like on that note, like, I mean, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but one thing I'm thinking about a lot, and I would love your thoughts, is like, what can a person, a rugby player, like someone in our community or a kid for that matter, do to like, yeah, to just be active when you're trying to also be really cautious? And I mean, do you have a favorite program that you use to do workouts, or a favorite account to follow to, or I mean, you probably create your own, but what recommendations would you make to a person or athletes ideally, to like, just, yeah, like be active, even if they're in their own home or they have a more confined space?
I would have people, I've been talking to a guy named Stuart Corsair, who's the Big Rig Rugby. He's a former Scottish international, and For some reason, like a guy like him has no real reason to know who I am, but does. A guy like Kane Hames did the same thing. It's just like, this guy's all black. He played for the Chiefs, and he's like, hey, how's it going? It's nice to meet you. Like, I knew who you were. I was like, wow, this guy's sitting down and talking with me. So I would say that, looking at those types of people and what they're doing is finding ways to make little bubbles, and having to be pretty strict right now. So if someone's doing something on their own, I don't know if I have a favorite one, but I think that remembering like what it's like to play a rugby game can be really tough. So I think it's good to go out and like bust yourself with a Bronco every once in a while and be like, man, that was absolutely disgusting, right? And like that terrible feeling you get all over your body and stuff, but like it'll be gone in a few minutes. So I think stuff like that. I've been running a broken Bronco like once a week where like I'll go hard, in the paint on a rep and then sort of rest 1-to-1. I think that's a really fun way to not die because you haven't been playing very much, and then get that feeling, because it doesn't matter if it's broken or not, right? Like that 4th or 5th rep is just the worst.
So like Aspire Rugby, which is the brand that I'm connected with, as you know, but we are trying to think of ideas and doing a lot of remote coaching at the moment. I am working with a couple athletes one-on-one, and we actually week 2, we're like, all right, everybody's running the Bronco as a baseline. I mean, it sucks. And especially it sucks when you have a thing.
It's so bad.
But like, I mean, let's run it now, and then let's run it in 3 to 4 weeks and just be able to mark our progress, because right now we feel like we're training kind of for nothing, and at least being able to see progress and get on kind of a routine, I think, is helpful. So I love that you said the Bronco of all things. I also know that the women's national team had a camp in Denver, and they all had to run the Bronco as a fitness test recently, and they did it, at altitude in masks. So
yeah, it's just, I can't imagine that part. I guess I may know what it's like in a month or so, but like, I mean, if you have resources, like obviously you know quite a bit about what you're talking about, those sorts of things, like the exercise physiology behind it, it's like sprints, maximal sprints for like 10 seconds, sort of repeated like that. They have huge effect on your body composition, your insulin sensitivity, like just muscle recruitment. So, it can be really tough to go and run the same fitness program every day when there's no rugby coming. So my suggestion to most people, and when people ask me about it, is like, just, like I do the Bronco thing once a week, and then I'll try to do like just a bit of Metcon. So like a fartlek, which is a funny word for 100-yard sprint, and then a jog or walk across, right? And sort of doing laps. But like Les Spillman, I'm sure you've met before, he's got his app, and he's a lot of very speed specific stuff. And I would just encourage people like to do some footwork stuff as basic as it might be. Like it's more than most people are doing, and those are the things, those high end sort of fast twitch muscle fibers are the ones that go first. Like they're great for adding muscle and like body composition, but if you don't use them, you do lose them. So like Les is pretty big on like a 20 hill sprint day. Like day 1 on this program, I think, was 20 hill sprints. So that's pretty rough, but it's like, what else are you doing really? Like, it's not like you're going to be tired for the game on Saturday. So get out there and do it. But any of those things, I also sat down with a guy named Ashley Jones, who is the strength conditioning guy for rugby.
Yeah. I'm wanting to listen to that, that recording. Tell me more.
It was just like a guy that I remember picking up, my first pair of weightlifting shoes was the first birthday I was away at college, and my mom bought me a pair of Adidas Ironworks 2, and it came with a subscription to Milo through this company called dynamicfitness.com. And they you had to, at one point you had to trace a picture of your foot and send it to them, because they didn't make weightlifting shoes in America, right? They're coming from Adidas, Germany, and these guys were the only distributor in America. So if you got really serious, you asked a strength conditioning coach at Humboldt State about it. He would give you the order form, a proper sheet that you would fill out, what size you wanted. And you had to talk about how they fit and sort of, now you can go to Dick's and get a pair of lifters, anytime you want, or order them on Rogue. But back then I had to fill this form out and make a carbon copy of my credit card, and stuff. And that first article that I read, the very first thing I ever read about strength conditioning for rugby when I left football was by Ashley Jones, and it was like the rule of 24 and how, the volume, would work for you if you're doing 24 reps of an exercise. So anywhere between 12 sets of 2, like a dynamic effort, to 2 sets of 12 for hypertrophy, right? Like just get those reps in and rotate the exercises and be a rugby athlete. And this is like, if there's so much information from him. There's a NSCA group on Facebook, a special interest group, for rugby specifically. And he posts, I think, daily, like, cool. Here's a great article, here's a podcast, here's a coach, here's some of those things. So you can get into the weeds, obviously, on Facebook, like in Facebook groups and opinions and stuff, but he's pretty phenomenal guy, and just like an oversharer, like wants other people to be specific, and like he shares so much because he's gonna change what he's doing, for the next team that he's on, and he's gonna constantly evolve and change what he's doing for the better. So you can have last year's program, like that's fine. Like, here you go. Like, good luck. But he always encourages you to sort of think about what you're doing and why. And so anyone that's interested in S&C stuff for rugby, like, he would be top of the list. He's All Blacks guy for a long time, Crusaders through their heyday, the Wallabies. He's worked in 2 other professional sports other than rugby, like worked for Scotland in the 2015 World Cup, like Panasonic Wild Knights, which is just a fun name to say, like a team from Japan, right? Like it's unreal. I think he's at the Houston SaberCats right now, but obviously his visa would require him to be like on campus, and he's not allowed to be there right now. So he's hanging out in Christchurch, taking Zoom calls from nobodies like me, and just like happy about it. So I think I missed the first 20 minutes of our conversation because I forgot to hit record. I was so excited, like, hey, how's it going? And I was like, oh man, I'm not, like, sorry, coach, I'm gonna put this button on.
Yeah, I don't know. I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, like, I mean, you've been involved so long, and you were able to travel abroad. I mean, to England with Shabbat and with the program that was taking and developing coaches. So you've done your part to learn, grow, contribute. I was going to ask you though, because one of your areas of expertise, is the scrum, what's something that an individual could do while at home to like continue to just stay on top of their scrum work, or at least be thinking about it?
Yeah, like outside of, if you don't have access to gym stuff, I would really just work on sort of that profile, and then working on not just like, oh, I'm in my 4-point stance, my shins are like, that's great. Like we all know that the scrum, there's a lot of weird stuff that happens, and there's different angles and pressure and things like that. So I think being really comfortable and sort of being able to expand on that stance, like have a really wide or really narrow, or, traditional exercises like bird dogs, or different, like really just getting in, being super comfortable with that. And Kabuki Strength has some really great, like principles of loaded movement. And they're looking at doing, adding bands and various, kettlebell exercises to sort of help you and really dial in specific postures and things, and like getting your shoulder blades, to function correctly. They're sort of aimed at powerlifting, but for someone in the front row or the type 5, looking to be in that sort of 120 degree knee angle, right, shins down on the floor, as specific as you can be, in that, like, so, adding rows and presses and different things, and, various like planks and things. I think that's probably the only way to do it, sort of on your own. If you've got another type 5 player in your house and you want to do partner drills, that's pretty cool. Like,
you do that with your wife, right?
Yeah. I get the whole family on one side, and then I've got a great picture of me scrumming against 5 high school kids from last year when we were allowed to do that sort of thing. They didn't have anyone to push against, and they had a game, and like, what are we going to do? Like, there's, like a mom and myself, and I was like, well, I'm going to scrum against all 5 of you guys. Yeah. But like anything like that, like, where you can get in those positions and sort of work in and out of them, and being super comfortable, getting in and out of those positions, and the setup, working on your setup with your feet, and sort of, I like sort of a drop in where you pull one foot back and you put the hands down suddenly, and then look at like picking your hand up under resistance and moving a band. And I'm fortunate to have about so much gym equipment, to the point where before all of this, like wife starts to look at you like, why is all this stuff here? Like, why do we have all these things?
I
And
was
now
gonna,
we've got a fitness club in the backyard. And she's like, yeah, this is great. Like, thanks for ruining our lives all these years by carrying this stuff around and caring about it. It's
like from every a place you've ever lived, you like have a whole truck full of gym equipment that it's like a necessity.
yeah. I
I
like
was
it.
gonna ask you, I got something as a gift I wanted to show you. Have you ever seen one of these?
Yeah. So right.
Yeah, what you think? I just got
I
asked.
I really like it. Again, like doing lots of heavy weighted stuff and things like that. I think they're a phenomenal little tool. Like before that, like to release your psoas, you've got to get some very strong, like masseur hand, like thumb, right? Like get in there and then sort of move that femur around to sort of unlock it. For people that don't know, like the psoas sort of connects in the front of your hips and then runs sort of upward at a high 45-degree angle back to your spine. So like if you're a kicker or something like that, like one side could get really wound up. If you have, problems with your hip flexors, or like you have a hard time like squatting without feeling back pain, or like standing up with a deadlift, like psoas can be a part of that sort of picture, what sort of drives you into it. So like as far as that release, I think it's really cool. Like you can sort of sit side on with it too and sort of use one side of it. You should be careful though, like there's a lot of important stuff in and around that psoas.
Some vital organs up in there.
Yeah, so like if it's really wound up, if it's super tight, like you can get like an endocrine response. And like I released mine after it got super tight recently. Last year I was having real issues with it, had it released. I got one on one of those at practice, and the next day I thought I had the flu. Like I was running a temperature, I was hot, I was achy and stuff. I stayed in bed, like I slept through my kids' schooling and stuff, like I was out like until like 10:30, 11 in the morning. I was all groggy and stuff. And like, what happened? And I told her, my wife, like, oh, I think I did something. But you can have like a full blown response to it, because muscles hold tension and like trauma. So when you release them, they can traumatize you for a day or so. So just be careful. Yeah. Sprinkle salt and pepper to taste on that one.
Oh man.
But I think they're fantastic, and if you have issues like in the front part of the hips in particular, like it can be a really cool tool.
Matt Truval, who was with the Sabercats last year, and we coached at Penn State together. He's a former USA Eagle for the men. He like brought it to training one day when we were coaching together, and he's like, this. He had flown with it. He had traveled with it. He's like, this is everything. So shout out to Matt.
It's pretty good. Yeah, I think I played against Matt. He was a Seattle guy for a little while and played for, they were OPSB at the time, and then they became Saracens and Seawolves. But yeah, I've had some run-ins with Matt over the years. One of my days at SFTG, he's a great guy. Those guys were always like, it was always a fun trip to go to Seattle and see those people. And
for sure.
Yeah, that's so right though. That's pretty cool stuff there. That one and our product, the Iron Neck, are big Joe Rogan podcast hits. People love those things.
Yeah, you'll have to send me goodies. Send me if you see something cool, or if there's reviews, like send them my way for sure.
All right. So what are you going to be doing in Denver? You've moved back. You have plans to work though, or?
Yeah, so I moved back with the intention of doubling down on growing Aspire Rugby as a business and as a brand. In order to do that, you also, well, for me, it's a juggling act of, putting resources in that direction, but also, living. So I do have a 9-to-5 job, and then I do all of the rugby projects and all the business stuff on the side. So pretty much every weekday night, and then, weekends, love of the game. So so it's been great. I hired a business coach this almost a year ago, which was a game changer for me. She helps entrepreneurs in the health and wellness space, not specifically rugby, but that's fine, because, the rugby stuff is more familiar to me, whereas the business stuff is something that's always, I'm always learning. So
you need health and wellness in rugby.
I like to be well. I like to be a rugby player that is well, mentally, physically. So yeah, so I do have a 9 to 5, which I actually really like here in Denver. It's a really fast growing startup, help adults go back to school online. And then I do all my rugby stuff in all the other time I have.
Yeah.
Close to family, as I said, which is really important to me right now. And you know, I'm always open to opportunities like yourself. I have a little bit of an itch to go abroad. That certainly probably won't happen in the immediate, but if there's something cool that comes up, like I'm always game for traveling and I like connecting with people and you know, learning more about rugby. And so yeah, we'll see. I'm around and uh in Denver for now.
Yeah, well, that's great. I think that it's important to sort of like go into things with your eyes wide open, and like we call them adventures, you know, like if we do this thing in January, like it would be an adventure, you know, and San Diego I think will always be home, but um, it would be a very cool, very unique opportunity, and I would love to be able to share that with my family and tick a couple of boxes, you know, because I remember being a 19-year-old kid sitting down in my professor's office, and he asked me what I wanted to do with my kinesiology degree, and like this job would be it. Like, you know, like it's not in New
Yeah.
Zealand, but other than that, it would be exactly what I said I wanted to do. So I
And
think it'd
isn't it
be
funny
hard
that
pressed to,
I
yeah.
was gonna say, isn't it funny that like your path, like I mean you got there and or have been there, but it's never like straight.
It's
It's
never
always
a straight, yeah. Not
yeah,
for me, not for us, I don't think. But
no, certainly not.
but it'd be fun. So yeah, so like we went in the middle of the pandemic. We went, you know, we like 6.5 months in. We're like, okay, like grandmother lives in Trinidad, Colorado,
Oh,
which is about 4 hours south. My wife's parents, they retired. They bought some piece of property, and like while they're sort of wrapping up retirement here in San Diego, they built this beautiful little place, you know, outside of Trinidad. And I was like, okay, well, they've got 35 acres to themselves. So we're hitting the road. Like we're leaving San Diego, and we're going on the 8 all the way out. And we stopped
yeah.
at like 4 national parks, and we made a real adventure of it. You know, I think it was like 2,800 miles in 10 days.
It's a
Um,
good drive though. It's a
it's
good
beautiful. So many cool things, you know, like I've been wanting to go to those caves in the sort of southeastern New Mexico, you know, forever, like since Planet Earth came out. And well, that's here in the United States, you know, like, but it is not just down the street, like eastern New Mexico. Like we go through El Paso, Texas, on your way to the caves, right? So it's like, well, I could just keep driving to Austin, right? Like we're only 8 hours away. All of a sudden, you're like, how did we get here? Like you've been in
yeah.
the car for 17 hours. That's how you got here. You're still like 8 hours away from Trinidad, right? So it's a big state, and there's some beautiful parts of New Mexico, Arizona. There were cool parts of it, but like we found a gator farm, you know, in like in the middle of Colorado, which like was very like the gator king of, right, like there's the tiger king, and we got to this place, and her grandfather, my kid's grandfather was like, I'm not going in. Like as we pulled up, we were all going in. We got to the parking lot. He's like, I'm going to stay here with the dogs. I was like, okay. And we got in there, and there was literally like chain link fences, like with posts. You know what I mean? Like I could have took this thing and shook it down, and there was like 25 alligators in there, and they were
There's like
giving one.
wire like separating the
I
alligators from your
swear, I swear, it was the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like they had like a tilapia farm, like farmed fish in there, and like you could throw pellets out there, and you could walk across the amount of fish that were in there, and like this huge botanical garden. But it's all like Mad Max and the Thunderdome. Like there's like duct tape on the windows and stuff, and you go
I'm
outside, and there's 1,000-pound alligator, and like you're walking on the boards of this deck, like a viewing deck, and it's got chairs and stuff. Kids are wrestling and stuff, and like I'm walking on it, like creaking, and like you can look down, and like it's looking up at you, like don't step wrong, bro. And it's like, man, your dad was on it. Like it was a super crazy experience. I'm sure you know that they're like, you can sign up a week in advance, you can wrestle one. Like they'll take the bands off of it, and you can hold it, like, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, that might
yeah.
be a fun experience. And then they like, you scroll through the waiver, and it's like people like this can happen to you, you know. I was like, wow, you
Maybe not
know,
today.
maybe not this time.
That's crazy. I'm gonna look it up, and it was in Colorado.
Yeah, it was near, oh, what was it? So we went to the Great Sand Dunes National Park, which is such a cool, like the way that the formed, right? It's like all built on sand, but it's wind driven, you know, because it's this old like seabed that's come up, right? So like all the sand that's there's like 80-story sand dunes that you can slide down, and it's brought all there by like just piled up, you know what I mean, like dust in the corner of your house.
Yeah.
So like you can go to the park, and then it was like a 30-minute drive from the park to this gator farm. I was like, we'll have lunch in between, and we'll go and check the gator out. And you're just like, wow, like it was a very unique experience to see.
That's hilarious. I'm gonna look it up. That's wild and very pop culture, like very fitting pop culture wise with everything. So
yeah. What was it? How was it? Alamosa, Colorado. That's where it was.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were staying with the family. So we stayed like in KOA campgrounds. So we're sort of separated and have a fireplace and do the thing.
You have a really good memory for a front row player. I have to say, like for all that have been banged around, like I'm very impressed.
Yeah. I do all right for myself. That, like the amount of useless, if I could get paid somehow, like to be like for my useless knowledge and like movie references, and if there were some sort of app I could download that into, I'd be well off. You know, I could just travel the world and play rugby.
I just commend you, because there are sometimes I'm like, I just can't remember some things. And I think it's just because I got, my nose is crooked. It's like this way. I started to get cauliflower in one ear, and I'm just like, all right. I mean, I've been knocked around a little, so maybe not every memory is still there.
Yeah, like I wrestled in high school too, and
there you go.
And like that was cool. I liked wrestling. I hated training for wrestling, and I remember looking at the cauliflower. I'm like, that's gonna be awesome. Like, I'm gonna look so tough with that
cauliflower.
Yeah, and my coach was just like walrus necked like monster, right? That just loved me and thought the world of me and thought I was gonna do all these great things. And I was telling him a little bit as, his son would get it and they would drain it. Like he had syringes like in his coaching bag, because if the blood vessels in your ear pop and then they sort of fill in, right? And then eventually we met some coaches like Coach Zelansky, who was at UC Davis, who was an Iowa wrestler, like national champion, Olympic guy. And his, like, it just looked like a snake. Like there was no indentation in his ears whatsoever. It was just like full and like a little hole, like someone had pushed in a cookie, like
it's
so you
like
could hear
Voldemort or something, like on Harry Potter.
Bad. It's so bad. Meeting met Ben Franks when I was in England, right? And like he's just a mountain of a guy, and like his ears are just, him and his brother look like his ears have been like chewed on by a dog. You're just like, oh my god, are you? And they're like, oh yeah, like you drain them, and then they put so when you see them in the games, right, and they've got that one piece of tape with and that comes off eventually after the third scrum, like they've drained it pre-game and then just put a tape over the top of it.
Yeah, I actually,
but like it doesn't happen for everyone. Like not everyone's ears do that. So like
no. So I after college, I actually went and played abroad in England for 6 months. Richmond, rugby football, RFU. It was a huge club. I had 3 women's sides. I showed up there and was playing and met a ton of international players. Maria Ribera, she was like one of my best friends that I met there. She played for Spain's national 15s and 7s team. But before that, before either of us had like very much traction, we were playing for this club team in England, and I like barely knew her. I'd just come from college rugby. And before practice one day, they were taping up her ear. She was getting cauliflower ear, and I had never seen it. Like, I mean, I was coming straight from college. I'd never seen such a thing. And they drained it, and they put a button to hold the shape.
Yeah.
And then they were like, all right, you're good. Go out to training. And I was like, what the actual fuck is going on? But she's a rock. Yeah, she's amazing. And I will always remember her just being a total badass. And just, I mean, as a female, like as a woman, like your aesthetics are really important. And it's not that cool in a lot of aspects to have your face all fucked up, but she was like, whatever it takes, like drain it, put the button on, go, we're good. So
see you later. Yeah, I grew up with a lot of people that were just tough. Like
I'm sure wrestlers, it's like common.
Yeah. So my senior year, I was like a 3-sport athlete all the way through school, and then I found rugby the last little bit and played 3 games, and then I got invited onto the Davis high school team to play it was the SFGG under 19s. So like a bunch of guys that I would play against eventually, like from St. Mary's. Danny Laprevat was in that game. I'm pretty sure. Like I hit him in the air and got a yellow card. There's a bunch of like, like everyone had given up, and like it was 5 minutes left and we were winning the game, and then they scored a try, and like everyone sort of like hung their heads, and like quit, and like then the score is getting out of control. And it was right before USA played Japan at Balboa Park, like before the 2003 World Cup. So I was all juiced up, and man, these guys are here watching the game, and then everyone sort of gives up, and I was like, I told the kid kicking off, hey, just hang one up for me, would you?
Oh
And
my
I
God.
smoked Danny in the air. Like, I don't even, he probably remembers it. Maybe not. He's had more head knocks than both of us put together. But like, I remember him just looking up on the ground, just like, what the fuck are you doing? And the guys like showed me the yellow card. I'm like, dude, everyone else quit too. Like, I don't want to be on the field. Like, I'm getting embarrassed, like I was like, no. So that's young, dumb rugby guy stuff. But yeah, the head knock things is really serious. But people just, I mean, I've seen some gnarly things like physically, that people do for club rugby or like high school wrestling, like guys getting their knees drained and taped, and I was like, man, we're at a tournament. Like we're wrestling 5-6 times today, like you might wrestle 7 times if you make the final.
Yeah.
There from 6 a.m. till 8 or 9 p.m. at night, and like first thing we do is we go and weigh in, and like one of the kids didn't make weight, so he drained his knee and he went for a jog, and then like came back and made weight, and you're just like,
oh my God.
I don't know. Like I consider myself a tough player, like an honorary player, but I was like, man, this might not be the sport for me. Like these guys are on another level of like what it means to them, but later on down the road, like I've played with all kinds of serious stuff, like, and people would say the same thing to me. Like, why would you do that? Like, so I don't know. I've never missed a game for an injury.
Love it.
Yeah, like it's probably not a good thing, like not a good reason, but those things I guess sort of rub off on you because you can always look back and be like, well, at least I'm not like so-and-so. I'm not as crazy as that person is.
Seen worse.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. Well, it's really great to hear that you're doing well in Denver. Yeah, I wonder like if we'll ever get out of this pandemic thing and get people to like wear a mask and stay away from each other for a little bit so we can go back to doing fun things.
Certainly.
Yeah, but that's Aspire, I think is another like really cool example of good people doing good things. And I think that, like you should definitely meet people like Ben Reynolds at the Rugby Exchange, right? Like, I think you guys could do a lot of great things together. I think that like having coaching resources, especially this time of, in our lives, like is super important, and to lots of people. So hopefully your business coach will like show you how to get out there and get in front of, I can't recommend your stuff highly enough. And
Thanks.
like, yeah, I think that, a lot of people would do well, to listen to what you have to say and support Aspire. Obviously, like I'm a big fan. I wear my Aspire t-shirt pretty often to the point where it's,
I'll get you some more stuff. So, send me an address. I'll send you over.
I'll come out and get it. Don't waste the shipping. Yeah, we'll get out there and see you. So I'm at, I'll probably have to bunk with Shabbat for a little bit when I get out there, when I finally drive out there. So you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
For sure.
Come for a distance, whatever.
Yeah, we'll stay 8 feet apart, wear masks, do all the things, and shoot the shit. So
all those things, yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, I don't know if I have too many other questions for you. No, a lot of the questions for me, I think these days, for people like sort of revolve around conversations about like inclusiveness, in our sport, the trans ban and things like that. I'm still like hoping to speak to someone in that arena and get their opinion on it, because I was fortunate to talk to a couple of people who are on the board of directors of USA Rugby, and for whatever reason they asked me what I thought, and so I think it's crazy that we would purposely eliminate like a scenario that has never really been, it's not really been an issue, right? Like we don't really need to cut anyone out of the game, because I think that if you allow a women's rugby team to make that decision for themselves, like, because a lot of women's rugby teams are on their own anyway, aren't they? Like they've got to figure out their own thing. They don't always have it connected to a men's club, so they've got to do their own. Like when I was coaching with the Berkeley All Blues, like I've said this on the cast before too, like they are the most organized rugby team I think I've ever seen and been a part of. And that includes like any of the professional organizations that I've been a part of or played with, like it's an unreal, like seriousness and like commitment to the club and making the club a place for everybody, you know, to be a part of. So,
They have
you
a
know,
serious culture there and a serious history. I was looking up, there was a fantastic podcast I had recently listened to on the topic of like including trans athletes. But yeah, carry on. But yeah, it is a hot topic, and yeah, certainly happy to support the idea that, you know, let's figure out a way to include people and not just say no outright. I think there's a lot of things to think about, and it is really important to make rugby accessible to people because, as we know, it changes your life. And I want that for as many people as possible.
yeah. And just, I think that's like the slamming of the door, right? Like, just like, we're just gonna end this now. It's like, well, who are you guys? Like, and then there's a thing, you know, like they make that decision, everyone, you can't really get on board with it. And then they sort of flip flop on some pretty racist stuff said by a captain, you know, of a national team. Which is just so funny. Like the first game that he plays, you know, I'm the captain of my country. They have to respect me. And then 2 weeks later, we're reading the stuff that he's saying. And I guess there was like a player revolt. Like players are going to walk out of the camp of Argentina if they wasn't reinstated. And World Rugby is just sort of like, well, okay, you know, like you can reinstate him. It's like, well, what? Like, so that's how it works now. You know, like you can get 14 guys together and just say like, we tell you what to do now. You know, and it was just Simon Zebo said some pretty great things about it. You know, just as far as like, it's unforgivable, sort of what he said. It wasn't like 30 or 40 years ago. It was like 6 or 7 years ago. And there's like the amount of time it took for World Rugby to say, hey, that was not cool. It's like, well, yeah, we know it wasn't cool. Like,
Yeah.
we don't need you guys to say that. We need you guys to stand up and sort of be the authority figure here and make sure that those sorts of things don't like become commonplace, right? Like
Yeah.
excluding certain kinds of people, and then you know, making a whole bunch of people really uncomfortable with things that you say while you're on tour representing your country or your club. Like,
Yeah. And I also just think more generally with all of the different um, social reform movements, it's just increasingly, it's always been, and even more now, important to learn from otherness or another person or a different lifestyle or a different perspective. And I think that's a great first step. The person I was looking for on my phone was Chris. I might be saying their last name, his last name incorrectly, but Chris Mosier, and he's the first trans athlete to make a U.S. Olympic team. I'll send you the info, but he does some phenomenal work around like sharing information about trans athletes and inclusion. And I listened to a really cool podcast that gave a lot of perspective. So I would just say like, it's important we all do our best to like learn and continue to be open. And that's a great first step.
yeah, I agree. I think one of the tournaments in San Francisco that I ran, like I got an email. It was sort of very coy email, you know, and then it was, you know, someone asking like, I'm a trans person and I want to play, you know, like, can I come and play your tournament? And I was like, well, you have a team, right? And he's like, well, I'm on this team. I was like, great. Like, I don't see why, like, I don't understand what the problem is, you know, like, so I'm going to say yes, and we'll figure it out. Like, you know, and like you get to the tournament, everyone had a great time. And there was absolutely no issue, right? Like there was no one had anything to say about it. So, and I was like, yeah, great. You know, like got a high five at the end of the day and like, thanks for coming and I appreciate it. And, you know, they bought a t-shirt and some beers and stuff. And like, it was, you know, it was a normal rugby event. So to then like sit around and have to say like, to see what like World Rugby, and again a little bit to the point like of USA Rugby too, like just taking forever to sort of get around the decision, you know. And like, you know, I don't know if you have to make a final decision right away. Like probably be better not to make a snap judgment about anything,
Sure.
but like coming out and saying, hey, listen, we're going to figure this out. Like we're not going to be on board with a ban necessarily. I think that the optics of players, especially now, you know, people are very conscious about, or should be conscious about like what they say and who they say it to. It's just like for me, it's just like a respect thing, right? Like if you value someone and you respect them, you know, you'll I don't know, mind your manners or whatever you want to say, like not be a dickhead right to their face right away, right? Like, and just try to respect them as a person and get to know them, you know, and like you said, learn from others.
Yeah, I mean, we all know what we know. Like we all know things based on our own experiences, but it's like, I mean, anything, like you don't know what it's like to live abroad until you live abroad or like whatever. So you don't know someone else's experiences until you have a conversation about it or whatnot. And yeah, like it's really important, and we're all humans, like.
Yeah. We're all stuck in this thing together too, especially these days. So might as well get on the same team, right? Get in for the big win.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to chew up all of your Friday. You probably got snow stuff to do or enjoy the rest of your day off, I imagine, you know. But I really appreciate taking the time. It's great to see your face and to
You as
chat with you a little bit. Yeah, I hope that that we'll be crossing paths soon. But if not, then you know we'll stay in touch.
Absolutely. I appreciate you letting me come on and sort of catch up with you and, ask you kind of what you've been up to. Take care of yourself. We will certainly be in touch. And as always, let me know how I can support you and, other great teams and causes and groups. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Lauren.